Hey everyone, it's Kenji. We're gonna cook a hanger steak. So this is a hanger steak. It's called a hanger steak because it hangs off the diaphragm of the cow. It's a very coarse grained steak, so you can see it has this real definite grain that runs through it. These muscle fibers run in that direction. And because of that, you need to cook it in a specific way. It's different from cooking like a New York strip or a ribeye. Well, the cooking is pretty similar. It's more the slicing and serving that's different. Hanger steak also tends to have a texture that is very sort of soft and squishy, but it goes quickly from being soft and squishy to being kind of rubbery and overdone. So out of all the steaks, you know, something like a ribeye, for example, you can cook it medium rare, it's going to be good. You can cook it rare, it'll be good. You can cook it to medium, it'll still be good and juicy. A hanger steak, if you take it anywhere past sort of medium rare, maybe pushing onto medium a little bit, it gets really, really rubbery. And if it's rarer than that, if it's on the completely rare side, it has a sort of squishy texture to it. So you really want to try and nail the temperature correctly on a hanger steak, also called onglet if you're in France. But so far, all I've done is gently marinated it in this bowl with some olive oil, crushed garlic cloves, some sliced shallot. I had some thyme, rosemary, parsley, whole black peppercorns. You can use any or all of the above. There's some amount of salt in there. I'm going to season this with a little bit more salt. And I had it in there covered with a plate in the fridge for about 6 hours. You can do it 6 hours to, overnight, and it'll be fine. A little bit of salt and pepper before we cook it. This is one of those cuts that, maybe 15, 20 years ago, you would not see in supermarkets. It would be reserved for the butcher. They would take it home to their family, or they might grind it up just because it wasn't too popular, or it would be sold to, a restaurant like a French bistro. A very common cut for something like steak frite. But these days, pretty commonly found in any supermarket. You can get it at home because it's delicious. All right, so I got a heavy skillet. I'm using copper here, but you can use cast iron, you can use stainless steel like a clad pan. You just want a pretty heavy skillet that you can get nice and hot. I've had this preheating over medium heat for a couple minutes, so it's nice and preheated. It's going to be kind of smoking hot here right now. But I'm going to add my oil. This is just a neutral oil. That's rice bran. And then I'm going to put my steak in. We will turn on the vent because this is going to make some smoke. By the way, if you're one of those people who really dislikes sort of splatter on their stovetop, you can do this inside like a deep Dutch oven. It won't sear quite as well because you don't get as much evaporation, but it will save your stovetop a lot of the splatter. Although, you don't have to go so crazy hot that this is like spitting and crackling all over the place. You see, I have it on sort of medium to medium high, not the absolute highest heat. All we're aiming for is that it ends up cooking through at the same rate that it browns. So by the time it's done browning, the inside is a nice medium rare. And you'll notice a hanger steak, it doesn't have like a distinct top and bottom side the way a New York strip or a tenderloin or a ribeye, something like that does. It's kind of a weird semi-triangular. It changes shape as it goes down its length. So you kind of do have to rotate it around a bit as you're cooking to make sure you're getting good browning on all sides. As with any steak, it's actually a pretty good idea to be sort of continuously moving it in the pan. This will help not only sort of even out any hot and cool spots in the pan, it'll also help with your browning. And rotating the steak so you're getting all the different sides of it will actually help develop a crust that's more even, and it'll also help it cook more evenly inside because you're not kind of like trying to jam all the heat through one side and then jam all the heat through the other side. When you do that, what ends up happening is that you get a much bigger sort of area of overdone steak on the exterior as opposed to a more even doneness throughout. So you can see this is getting some pretty good browning already. If I was at a restaurant and my chef saw me doing this, any one of the old restaurants I worked at and my chef saw me using tongs on a steak, they would murder me. But I'm not at a restaurant, I'm at home, and I use tongs because I feel like it. I guess the idea being that with some of these things, some meats you cook, some fish you cook are too delicate to be cooked with tongs. You end up kind of damaging the flesh, and that is very, very important. Undamaged flesh is very, very important for a restaurant. Now I know some of you are going to say, oh look, you're burning the pepper. Don't put on the pepper till the very end. You know, that's a personal decision you can make. I happen to like the flavor of pepper when it's like this. I don't think it gets bitter at all. I think it actually gets a kind of nice sweetness to it when you cook it, and even when it kind of gets blackened like this. But if you like the sort of, you know, spicier kick of really fresh pepper, of raw pepper, wait until the end to add it. If you prefer the more mild sweetness of cooked pepper like this, do it now. All right, so we're getting some pretty good browning on here. I'm gonna go in with the thermometer and check our temperature. Pretty low, 70 degrees, 69 degrees. So we're aiming for a final temperature of around, after resting, around 125 degrees or so. So that means I'm gonna pull this out of the pan when it's at about 100 degrees. It does rise pretty rapidly though, especially towards the end. So once it hits around, say 80 degrees, I'm gonna add my butter and aromatics. You don't have to marinate it, by the way. You can just you can cook it just straight from raw, salt and pepper. That's all you need. You could also, you know, do something like dry brine it, which means, you know, salt it, let it sit uncovered in the fridge overnight so that the exterior dries out a bit, and that salt has a chance to work its way into the interior of the meat. You see, I'm kind of constantly moving it around the pan. I'm even adjusting my heat a little bit lower. When you're searing things like this, when you're cooking a steak, cooking a chicken breast, whatever it is you're cooking, always monitoring the temperature of the pan and what's going on inside the pan is important, because, you know, our goal again is to make sure that the exterior is nicely browned but not burnt before, by the time the interior is properly cooked. So if it looks like the outside is browning too fast, you want to turn down the heat. And if it looks like the inside is cooking too fast and the outside is not going to brown enough before it's ready, you want to turn up the heat. All right, so 90 degrees. I'm going to go in there now with my butter and aromatics. So those same aromatics that I had earlier, which you can use any or all of the above. You don't have to use the exact same ones that I did. I just had a big mix because that's just what I had in the fridge. So I put in parsley, thyme, rosemary, black peppercorns, shallots, a couple garlic cloves that are crushed, and then some butter. At this point, I'm going to grab a spoon, and we're going to do a little bit of basting. Yeah. We're going to get those aromatics nicely infused into that butter. The aroma infused in there. I'm going to start spooning, spooning, spooning. And the idea here is that you're kind of bathing the steak in a very flavorful fat. And especially for a steak like hanger that has such a loose grain to it, that fat can actually sort of pour into those spaces between the muscle fibers and really flavor it really nicely. This is effective also for, you know, it is effective also for something like a New York strip or a ribeye, but with those steaks it's more of a surface treatment, whereas something like a hanger steak or even say a, you know, a flank steak or a flat meat steak, you really do get the flavor inside the meat itself. All right, let me give it another quick temp. All right, we're at 110 degrees. So I'm gonna pull it off very shortly because at this point we're at about 110 degrees. There's going to be carryover cooking once we pull it out of the pan, so it'll continue to rise in temperature as it sits out of the pan. So let me get another little sizzle platter here. Get it out of the pan right there. I grab those aromatics, spoon them on top, so they give their last bit of flavor. All right. You know what I'll do? So you could serve this as is. It's really great just sort of with some mustard, maybe some mayo to dip into. I'm gonna make a quick pan salad because I just remembered I had these mushrooms I cut. So while this rests, you always wanna rest your steaks to allow the juices to cool down a little bit, and for the carrier overcooking to occur, and for the temperature inside there to sort of equalize. Pull out some of those big peppercorns. Okay. Go in there with a handful of sliced creminis. And these minced shallots I have from a knife skills video I was shooting earlier. All right, so as the mushrooms kind of expel some of their moisture, we're going to use that moisture from the mushrooms to scrape up some of those pan juices. A little bit extra butter. You don't want to let that flame get into the pan. We're not stir frying here. All right, our mushrooms are browned. I'm going to go in there with some shallots. Now, if I had like something like wine, I would use it. You know what I'll use? I don't have any wine, but I do have I got some Chinese cooking wine. Shaoxing wine. You know, this similar flavor to sherry, so you could actually use sherry for something like this as well. Just going to deglaze with that. Alcohol fumes burning off is okay. All right, that's just going to give us a little bit of acidity in there. Turn down the heat. Dab of Dijon. Hey, I'm on. A glug of cream. Some coarsely ground black pepper. And that's a pretty classic sort of bistro style pan sauce. Get some salt. It's nice, actually. I kind of like that Chinese wine in there. It gives it a good, that oxidized flavor. It gives it a little good hit of acidity. All right. And at this point, our steak is probably rested enough. So I will go ahead and slice it. That sauce is quite good. Let's finish it off with the steak juices. Alrighty, let's see how we did here. So now, when you've got your steak, this is the real vital part. Making sure that we slice it properly against the grain. So you can see the grain kind of runs this way. If we were to just slice it straight across like this, your knife would be parallel with the grain, and so that those long fibers will be running across each piece that you slice off. So instead, what we want to do is we want to find a way to angle against it. So now you can see the grain runs this way, kind of like that, and I'm going to hold my knife like this and slice. That way you shorten those muscle fibers and make the steak much more tender. I think we kind of nailed the doneness here. All right, what I'll do is I'll start with our sauce. I'm gonna make like a little bed of it. And I'll go in there with the steak. We'll finish this off with some nice coarse salt. This is fleur de sel. You can use something like, Malden, whatever kind of coarse salt you like, but something that'll give it a bit of crunch. If you want to make it look a little fancier, or add a little extra to it, let's finish it off with some thyme leaves. Just the tender leaves so that you can eat them all with the steak. I'll find a little extra layer of flavor. All right. All right, this looks pretty good to me, huh? All right, get some steak, get little mushrooms on there. There's a lot of flavor in hanger steak. Yeah, you want to try some one? Here. Excellent. All right. I'm gonna eat my steak. Guys, gals, non-binary pals. Hanger steak with mushroom sauce. See you later.